So, back to what I was saying, it is so important that we have some foundational, healthy choices that we set up for ourselves, that we can count on in our lives, so that as all of the change happens out here, we end up standing on a center point where we learn how to set ourselves up well. When we do this, we are prepared to then inspire other people with the choices we're learning, the healthy choices that we're learning. And we become an impact that is so needed, helping and inspiring and leading other people to find their center, to make healthy choices for themselves. And one of those healthy choices is by showing up for events like this, where not only do you open to consider some perspectives that I'll be sharing, but we come together. We come together in a way that is loving and supportive, and we show up in mutual support, even though every single one of us, no matter where we are in the world, is a unique individual. Today, I want to talk about individuality and how we don't live on a planet that has learned to truly embrace the sacredness of individuality. I talk a great deal about the perspectives of the awakening soul in the work that I do. And one of the most important elements of that awakening soul is the sacredness of all of life, starting with self. And so for us to be here in a time where lots of events, many of them upsetting, are taking place, to come together in places like this where we can be in mutual support, even though we're unique individuals. As an example, I'm going to share a lot of perspectives today. I don't need you to agree with me. I don't need you to do anything but consider being open, evaluating, living with the perspectives I'm going to share, see how they serve you or don't. If you decide some of what I share does not serve you, just let it go. Plant a seed of possibilities. That, for me, is an essence of the soul, which sees the bigger perspectives, the possibilities, even the ones I haven't grown into or considered yet. Super important. But before I get going, which if you've been around me or with me very long, you know I will get going and I can forget certain parts. One of the things I promise for today is to do a meditation, to connect our energy, to focus on comfort and flow and ease in our lives. That's a part of setting yourself up well as an individual. Most of the time, people have never been encouraged or taught to connect their energy with other like-minded people who share the intention of mutual support, comfort, nurturing, and a space of allowance for individuality. So before we go any further, I want to do a very brief meditation that joins our energies in many different parts of the world so that we strengthen one another. To know that we're not alone, crucial in this time, particularly after a year of pandemic, or not quite a year, but you get the point, a year of pandemic, where more people are feeling isolated, sequestered, etc. Really important to show up for events like this. And even if you haven't yet taken the initiative to share this with friends and family, after you experience this today, if you find some of it comforting and inspiring and mind expanding, share it with your friends and family. They can come here to this Facebook group and watch all of the videos. So, with that said, What do we do to meditate and join our energies? Simple. Let it be simple. Life can be so much simpler than what most of us have ever been taught to embrace. So meditation for me simply means inner focus. So get comfortable, close your eyes, and take a few deep breaths in the nose, out the mouth. It will sound something like this. Most people have never been taught or encouraged to breathe out of the mouth that's that open and proactive. It really moves energy and releases tension. So we're going to do 3 breaths together now. Together we breathe into the lower body. Let go, be calm. In the nose. Relax into your body wherever you're sitting. One more. Now stay inside with your eyes closed and just imagine your heart space. Imagine the sun is starting as a small speck of gold light there. And now with your imagination, which is a powerful way to command energy, with your imagination, allow that sun to grow bigger and bigger and bigger in your heart. Gold light, radiatory light. Feel its warmth filling your body. Keep breathing with it as you imagine it, just like a child would imagine. And now imagine that light radiating, filling every cell until it radiates from you and fills the space around you, impacting the room you are in, sending comforting, calm, nurturing energy out, safe to open and relax. And now imagine a beam of that gold light from your heart, send it right through the computer to me. And I'm going to send one to all of you right through my computer. Together we breathe. Trust and imagine like a child. One more breath to send that same beam of gold light from you to me and me to you. Acknowledging each other's sacred individuality. Feel it. Tune into yourself now. Just open to the experience of receiving. Open to the experience of calm. Choose it on purpose. Whatever we focus on, we exacerbate in our bodies. So expand that energy of calm, comfort, and connection. And now imagine sending your heart energy out to every other person who is watching this live or who will be watching this video in coming days and weeks. Breathing out and expanding to everyone else. On the first breath, send it out, and on the second breath, we'll receive. See every person comforted and bathed in a loving, non-invasive way by everyone else's heart energy. Wishing each other well, affirming each other's safety to be individuals, affirming how safe we are and how not alone, how connected and a part of something we are. Now a breath to receive all of that energy from everybody else, focusing mostly on the in-breath, breathing it into your heart, and then breathing it out into every cell of your being. Feel all of that connection for a moment. Allow it to be whatever it is for you. Don't worry that you're not having the correct experience. Practice trusting the perfect place that you are on your journey. And now gently bring yourself back into this space and connect with your eyes. See how safe it is to have opened to all of that connection, giving and receiving, mutual support, shared sacredness. Those words mean something profound. If we've never been taught how to energetically connect or set intentions, then they can sound like idealism, which is a fancy word for bullshit. Forgive my language. Idealism is a concept in my head that is not yet an actual, reliable experience. It does not have to be idealism, I promise you. Connection, sacred, shared space. I'm going to give you a couple of examples. Well, first of all, let me say before I go further, today we're going to talk about several things. One is cycles. Super important to understand that all of our lives operate according to cycles every single day. I'll show you what I mean. We're going to talk about soul perspectives, starting with understanding how the soul knows that every single thing that happens is there to serve us, to inform us, to give us opportunities to have experiences. And the soul reveals you to you with everything that's happening. I'll explain what I mean. Then we'll talk about archetypes, how all of us represent archetypes in each other's lives. I'll explain what that means. These are some of the concepts. So before I jump into those, I want to share, starting with the last Facebook Live we did, which was on the solstice of 2020, a momentous day that was not only the longest and shortest day of the year, depending on whether you're in the northern or southern hemisphere, that will start a new cycle of moving toward soul-connected solar energy, sun energy. And that cycle was momentous in one particular way. It was the next step of a cycle, a long process of planetary evolution moving toward the awakening soul. If you did not watch that video on the solstice of 2020, it is still recorded on this very Facebook group. Watch that to get tons more information. Today I'll just give a little bit of a recap eventually. Ultimately, that set in motion Saturn and Jupiter aligning directly, connecting to all of us on the first degree of Aquarius. Why? If I'm not into astrology, I happen to be into all of life. And astrology has been an amazing thing for me to explore. But if you don't happen to be into astrology, no problem. That doesn't mean the energy doesn't exist. You might not be into exploring how electricity works, and yet you can plug into the wall without understanding it, and you're still impacted by that connection of energy. The same is true for the planetary movements. Jupiter, as an example, is 100 times bigger than the Earth. Imagine the impact of that huge energy aligning with Saturn, our soul curriculum planet, meaning the lessons you're here to learn, the taskmaster that makes sure each of us has opportunities to face those challenges, turning them into more integrated self. So that energy on the first degree of Aquarius, what does that mean? We moved into an energy that set in motion a sign that is all about unity consciousness, planetary, the good of the whole, all humans, actually all of life on the planet. That is the focus of Aquarius. One of many, but that is a primary energy that is totally relevant to the awakening soul on the planet. That set in motion on the solstice, the beginning of a cycle. Now I want to share, in the first few weeks since that took place, I went through several things. Now, I'm not here to talk about me and what's going on in my life, except that the archetypes of those experiences are completely relevant to our exploration today. So I'm going to share a couple of them. Here I go with the word couple. 2 days after that solstice, I ended up going to my family's house for Christmas. We've all agreed to come together during this pandemic from time to time just to have safe places to remind ourselves of connection and to get some hugs and some affection. So we came together, and for a few days I was paying attention to the fact that our family has grown so much. Every individual in the family having moments of challenge, moments of button pushing, moments of needing big support. And we have learned and grown together. That is not how my 3 siblings grew up, myself and my 2 sisters. That is not how we grew up. Like most of you, we grew up in households where everybody did the best they could, but nobody really knew how to communicate. Nobody taught us a thing about connecting to self or opening into all the things I've already mentioned. But my family, I am very blessed to say, has all shown up in their individual ways and learned how to get better and better and better at connection. We laughed together. We cried together, we played games together, we shared poignant moments, we gave space for everybody to do what they needed to do as individuals. And I was so grateful that we've had a long time together to go through a cycle of learning that had a lot of bumps along the way. The bumps are the challenges that give us the opportunity to show us where we need to grow. We learned by facing things together and will continue to learn, I hope, for the rest of our lives. How to love, how to share, how to feel safer to open up and be the authentic individuals that we are. So I went from there to a friend's house just outside of DC for several reasons. Number one, we felt it was a poignant time to come together. She and I hadn't seen each other for many years. We'd been talking about it, and we just wanted to come together in the intimate time of the holidays. We made sure that everybody had healthy 14 days prior to be responsible within the pandemic. And I went down to spend time with her. In that 36 hours, I met her husband and ultimately 3 children, but 2 live with her. And so I had the chance to be with her 2 teenage sons as well. Why am I mentioning this? It became a profound example that we don't have to have long cycles of learning with each other in order to come together and create meaningful, loving interactions. In those 36 hours or a day and a half, we literally did similar to what my family did. Shared together, laughed together, cried together. Yes, even that. We explored, we talked about life and spirituality and what's going on the planet. We shared so many things, played games together, went hiking together, and built a trust that was the seeds of so much more. We even had a moment where one of them trusted me enough to say, something you shared is not comfortable to me. Something you shared brought up stuff for me, and I just don't know how to make peace with that. I loved the willingness to have conversation, the willingness to trust and put it on the table. I first said, I apologize if anything that I shared upset you. And whatever feelings he may have been going through, I said, I honor where you are. You don't need to see it the way I see it. You don't need to agree with me. All that we've done in 36 hours has been so profound that peace is not necessary. And I want you to know I'm open to being surprised, to changing my perspective, to allowing my perspective to evolve. Perhaps where you are at the moment is more a perspective of truth that I will discover. The fact that he and I held such a loving place for one another is an archetypal example that says to every one of us, it's entirely possible to come together in love and respect, even if we hit points where we don't see things from the same perspective. Even if we have conflicted feelings that need to be worked through. If it's possible for two who haven't even known each other before to do that within 36 hours, think of how inspiring that can be on the planet. Now, from there, I decided days later to face a big fear of mine. I am a real believer, for lack of a better word, that when we have a fear of something from our history, or just a fear of something we haven't faced yet, creating a safe, consciously chosen way to face that fear, creating a nurtured experience, is the way to heal the fear. Old experience, new experience. If the new experience is set up well in a nurturing way, then we move out of fear. So what am I referring to? Well, if you've seen me ever before on these videos, or on my website, or online since 1996, let's just go with that, you will recognize I do not look the same today. I decided to face a fear for many reasons. I'm not going to take the time to go into all of that today because I have way too much more ground to cover. I decided to shave my head. So here I am facing my fear and did it to nurture me, to free me. I don't want to be spending time worried about things that I might be holding in fear. So creating ways to stretch our comfort zone, if we do it in a way that's nurturing, is profound. It's what I help all of my clients do as they claim more and more of self. It requires facing the unknown, which is exactly what segues us to today. What's going on in the world? My goodness. Just in the United States alone, the reason I say this is because I have tons of clients or people who are connected through the website from all over the world. But my goodness, in the United States, what a time of shakeup, surprises, violation, shocking events that have upset a lot of feelings in people. Why do I point here in the body? This is the energy center of emotions. So it's shaken up a lot of feelings, which is why I wanted to do this talk today, in order to give some perspectives of the soul, some bigger perspectives that will help us understand why these things are happening, how those events are there to serve us, inform us, give us chances to practice healthier choices. That's what the soul encourages, which I shared earlier already. So in order to put these events into a context, we need a context. If we have a bigger context, then a certain moment within that context doesn't become the myopic focus. It doesn't become so threatening because we can understand it in a bigger context. Let's just talk about us as adults looking at children and looking at the learning curve of a child. Within their growth and learning curve, they're in a certain cycle that we'll call childhood. Well, when they start to do certain things at 2-3 years old, acting out their will, no, me, my way, my toy. When they do that at 2-3 years old, we go, oh, let's put it into a context and understand this as a part of a stage of learning, and they need to go through that stage. If we are conscious adults, we will nurture that stage. That doesn't mean it doesn't trigger our feelings. It's not fun. We don't want that stage to last a lifetime. Really important clue. But if we nurture it, then the child grows and is guided through example how to trust that their needs will be met, their feelings can be heard, their individuality will be championed, but it's a part of the bigger picture. It's not all about them, and it's not all about me, the parent. We can learn, and this is how we have a context of childhood that doesn't allow this moment, the terrible twos it is often called, to become so overwhelming that it shuts us down. We go, oh, it's a stage of learning. This could not be more crucial for us to understand and consider when we look at our whole lives. We have many stages and many cycles, and even though we tend to think of childhood reaching a certain point, and by the time we go to college, then we enter adulthood, then it's just sort of all the same. No, that is not how it is intended to be when seen from the perspective of the soul. So now let's create a context of self that includes the whole lifetime. Actually, we're going to make it even bigger than that, but let's just start there. A clear map of self is that there are 3 distinct stages, each building on the last. The first stage, at the center of all of our beings, is the child. Then we expand out into the adult, and then we have the potential to expand out into the soul. The The soul holds a space for all three stages. The adult is intended to hold a space for the child and the adult. And then the child is the starting place that is like the hard drive of our computer. It actually exists right here in the body. So if we divide these three segments of child, adult, and soul into the body map, we have child from the solar plexus down. We have adult in the heart center, which is by far the biggest center. And then we have soul-connected consciousness from the throat center all the way to the top of the head. Child, adult, soul. A whole human being. This is still the hard drive of the computer, no matter how far we get. So now let's talk about the healthy map of experience. Huge word, huge word. We are literally learning and determined by our experiences way more than we have been taught. Why do I say we and make it sound like I'm assuming? I've been doing this work for 25 years and have taught thousands of people all around the world, and this has proved to be consistent. That doesn't mean you have to agree with me. So I just do a little reminder. We are ruled and determined and influenced by experience more than any other thing. More than any other thing. We learn through whatever we experience and through whatever decisions we make about those experiences. Experiences, decisions. Emotional, mental. This is how we develop the hard drive of the computer. All of this will be relevant to the events that are taking place in the world, I promise you. So, in the healthy model, we would spend childhood developing a trust, an innocence, and a wonder, trusting that we matter, trusting that we can be nurtured in 9 specific ways, trusting the nurturing, trusting the receiving, trusting the asserting or giving and receiving, and in that childhood of building innocence, wonder, and trust, we become prepared for adulthood. We build a foundation of the individual self, individuality. Then we are intended to spend adulthood evolving that individuality, getting in touch with our gifts, our talents, our interests, and investing our individuality into the world so that we enhance the lives of those around us. Also, learning lessons with one another, like I described in those early experiences from December 20th with my family, then with my friends in just outside of DC. Just like that, we need to learn lessons with one another, learn how to communicate, learn how to trust opening, etc. And yet we invest in these profound learning curves, healthy relationships. That is the intention of adult, to become empowered, trusting that I matter and I have this self to offer. We don't need to do that on a planetary scale in order to have value. We just need to do it with our family and friends, perhaps in our community, perhaps on a bigger and bigger scale, no matter what. Even if we become politicians and impact countries and the whole planet, it's still the same principles. So, adulthood is intended to build all of that. Then the soul is the realm where we learn how to experience deeper and deeper value of self and one another, meaningful experiences of intimate connection and sharing with one another, and purpose. The purpose is what? to learn how to claim self. The purpose to learn how to love giving and receiving. How to love, which I guess identify or define is probably a better word. Love, for me, is sacred acceptance of all that is. Sacred acceptance of all that is. All that I am, my whole learning curve, my wounds, and my challenges in addition to my greatness. The purpose is to love, which starts with self. And then bringing that love out here, just like the journey I shared of my family, just like the 36 hours with my friends, all three levels were operating. If you're like every person I've ever taught over the years, including me initially, I wasn't taught any of this. I was never taught about self, how to understand the map of self, how to understand the energy flows that want to happen in self. So with all of that, why, if that's the model, why is that not what we're doing? I said that was the healthy model of potential. Where does this become blocked so that we don't do this expansion throughout our lifetime, not just through college and then I guess it's done? The reason is I hinted that in childhood we all need 9 distinct levels of nurturing. If we receive those, then we learn to trust I am safe to be the individual that I am. I am safe and nurtured in the world. I am safe to move out into the world. That doesn't mean it's without challenges, but I have a foundation of self-value with which to bring. And so I can expand out into adulthood. Now, I doubt that I'm going to find many people in the world who've heard about 9 nurturing needs and could name what those are. Just ask yourself today whether you can name those. No problem. That's where you are in your process. There's so much to look forward to for all of us, growing into more and more of self. So we need this, we don't get this, and when we don't, we become, instead of the wonder child, we become more the wounded child. Fear, shame, judgment, self-doubt. There are so many things that leave us in separation and we stop growing. We become defended and then we put on a mask and we get ruled by the agendas of the wounded child. There's a broad spectrum of those, and I'm just going to introduce the idea today. Some of the agendas of the wounded child equal, I can't be wrong. I have to be right. Right, wrong, win, lose. I have to win. If I lose, it means it's an affirmation of my shame of self. No, says the soul, there are much broader, wiser truths, but it's a level of learning, and so this is a part of your challenges and setup. Win, lose, right, wrong, reward, punishment. We can end up thinking, I don't trust in the world. I don't trust that anybody cares in the world. Quick story. I remember an evening years ago in my family. We were sitting around the dining room table and my niece, just out of the blue while everybody's having conversations, says quite emphatically, I don't believe that love is possible. She was clearly building up over a period of time and felt so passionate she couldn't hold it in anymore. I don't trust that love is possible. I happened to be the one who jumped in first, and I said, sweetheart, what do you mean? Fill us in. She said, I don't think anyone feel safe enough to be who they truly are, to feel how they truly feel, and share that with another person. Therefore, I don't think I really know anyone. And I said some version of this. While I completely agree that we tend to be quite protective as a planet, caught in fear, shame, and judgment. I didn't say all those words, but I need to say it now to explain what I meant. I said, even though it's true, wounded child, I am so glad to tell you that I personally know that love is indeed possible. I know from my own life and learning curve. I know from the learning curves that our whole family is going through that it is entirely possible to learn how to share the journey of self. And when we have this, now I'm back to just explaining to you, not talking to her. When we have this wounded child self, we then need to include adulthood as the opportunity to learn what are the 9 nurturing needs? What are the things that will allow me to experience safety and connection, mutual value and support? If we take the time to gather the tools, we can learn to nurture and heal, and that is the perfect set of steps for the soul journey. So how does all this apply to what's going on in the United States and the attack on the Capitol? Or let's even just include what we've witnessed in the last years from the government in the United States. Probably many other governments as well, but I have to choose one place to keep this from getting too complex. If we are a world that has a soul journey, and we first move through childhood, then we move through adult, and we move into soul. If along the way the planet gets trapped in a stage of learning, or the individual soul has only moved to the terrible 2s, then we can become trapped, and that part of us operates more fully than the wiser adult or the truly valuing soul. It operates and runs the show as the hard drive of our computer. So we can be 40, 50, or 90 and still very much ruled by the wounded child part of ourselves. The planet as a whole is moving into this awakening. Now let me explain this briefly. There are 2 periods of time where energy moves in our bodies in every lifetime. And it moves and awakens us from childhood into adult, and it's called puberty. That Kundalini energy, moving much more powerfully, changes and transforms us physically, emotionally, mentally, sexually, and spiritually into more that we are. We maybe still be ruled by the wounded child, but we are expanded into adult bodies and potentials and situations and opportunities to learn with one another. Now there's a second wave of energy that takes place, typically at midlife, and that same Kundalini moves up the spine and is trying to awaken us. Just as powerful a transformation as we experienced in puberty, trying to move us into the soul energy. That is what is happening on the planet now. Individually, I'm these stages and archetypes, and as a collective, we are these stages and archetypes. And so, wherever we are on the soul journey is the stage of soul development we've reached. Well, the planet is also evolving according to these same stages, and the energy on the planet has begun to awaken, and it literally moves similar to what I'm doing with my arms. has begun to awaken into the second wave of Kundalini midlife awakening. Wait a minute, I've never heard that statement, midlife awakening. No, we've heard midlife crisis. How many times have you heard that one? Why? Because when that Kundalini moves in a powerful way, if we have tons of blockage of fear, shame, and judgment held in the hard drive and throughout the body tissues, that Kundalini smashes into all of the blockages and creates accelerated breakdown, aging, disease. And until we reach a stage where we're ready to expand into soul, that has served us beautifully. We literally hit the edge and we go, I'm not ready for this yet. I haven't even healed the wounded child. So instead of all this energy, which my body can't handle, we have a beautiful system that says, okay, let's prepare to end this particular lifetime, and my soul will move on and come back until I have as many first grade lifetimes, fifth grade lifetimes, etc., as I need to continue awakening in this broader spectrum of the soul journey. We have never really spent any time talking about soul as a planet, certainly not in practical ways or understanding the energies and awakenings. So, like it or not, that is what is happening on the planet. This energy is building and it is causing the movement to come up. If I have wounded child right here, and all of the blockages of my frozen wounded child haven't been nurtured by my adult, or have only reached a certain percentage of being faced by my adult, then it's going to trigger my wounded child, and I'm going to build up more fear, shame, and desire to fulfill the agenda of the wounded child. Let's give some examples. Again, I remind you, I have to be right. No, I can't admit mistakes. No, I'm not safe to speak up. Or no, I have to be heard. You must validate me. These are all wounded child symptoms rather than empowered adult running the show. You might begin to be putting some pieces together about what we've been experiencing on the planet in recent years, in the United States for sure. And so this acceleration of energy, how many people have talked about energy growing up? Oh, I know you're only 6, but let's talk about moving energy in your body. Let's talk about proactive breathing. Let's talk about how to nurture your feelings. That is not the world we have lived in. And so we need to catch up and get the education. So this awakening is triggering many things. Now, before I go further into the specifics, I want to share one event that took place from the solstice through the examples I already shared. When I went to visit my friend in DC, the 3 of us, my friend, her husband, and myself, went on the full moon, felt compelled. It was a phenomenal opportunity to go into DC. We went on that full moon evening when the full moon energy, which happens to represent this same space of the subconscious mind where the child lives, we went into DC, and even though we're 3 individuals who don't agree on everything, but have mutual respect and a capacity to communicate and come together, laugh together, share together, cry together, inspire, challenge in healthy ways, the 3 of us went into DC and we did a meditation standing between the White House and a new thing in the DC area called the Black Lives Matter Pavilion. Now, I just thought it was interesting. The stage we're moving out of is all about polarity and duality, the opposition of two sides. This is a big way that the wounded child operates. I have to be right. I can't be wrong. I can't make mistakes. I must make you wrong. We went between the White House and the Black Lives Matter. I'm not talking about race. I'm talking about black and white. It's another example of duality. We went into the space between those two sacred sites, and we stood and sent love to every single player. We sent love to President Trump. We sent love to Congress. We sent love to every player because we had a feeling, because of what has been brewing on the internet, that this last week, leading to January 6th and President Biden's confirmation from the Congress, we had a feeling that a lot of rioters, demonstrators, we hoped it would be demonstrators, would come to have their voices heard. And so we wanted to send love into the space, a place of neutrality and acceptance of all players. Am I here in my process, more like wounded, stuck in the terrible twos, in the agenda of wounded children, or where am I? Let's hold a space of love for all. And that's exactly what we did. You can find pictures of that on my website or on, you get the point. I don't want to turn this into an advertisement. So that love sent out, and then we went to the Capitol and drove around the Capitol in the same sacredness, talking about that and what it represents. So glad we did. The point was not to control events to what we prefer. The goal was, let's show up and do our part to be a resonance of loving acceptance of the whole. So now, let's talk briefly about the United States. History, in recorded history as it was taught through school, showed that ancient history took place for a great extent from the Middle East through Asia. All of those old stories like Egypt, Old Testament, etc., took place in that part of the world. Then more recent centuries, the awakening of enlightenment, all of those things took place in Europe. That doesn't mean they weren't happening other places, but the center of a lot of awakening took place there in Europe. Between those two continents is this little continent that was not touched by all of that in a big way. It was holding space for Native Americans, and I'm not talking about just the United States by any stretch, this continent, and let's just make it these center continents, but I don't want to get too complicated. This ground in the middle was being operated and held sacred, operating with nature and life and animals, the sacredness of spirit, all of the Native American archetypal energies were operating here. And in the stage of growth, now I'm going to go back to this, we had a certain awakening that started to take place, and the wounded child stage of development said, I don't want to be told how I have to do religion. I don't want to be ruled by monarchs and despots and dictators. I want to claim my individuality. That is what led people from certain parts, starting in Europe, but eventually many parts, to come to this land to have a new start. Sadly, they were stuck at a certain stage of development, even though they were wounded children saying, I want to get out. I can't take it anymore. I'm going to move to another place so that I can be a celebrated individual. Well, they hadn't learned what being a celebrated individual actually equaled, and so they came here and ended up not holding sacred space to work together with Native Americans. The Native Americans pretty much were wiped out to a much smaller population, not included. So the wounded child, in its learning curve, took some steps. Well, these are necessary steps to get to eventual adult choices, leader-empowered choices. But nevertheless, that was the stage that they came over. And after a couple of 100 years, some enlightened, more enlightened than most were in the day, forefathers, as it were, of this country came together and created a desire for independence, which happened in 1770s. After war, after fighting, after going, no, you won't control me. No, I have to have a voice. They agreed upon a certain set of ideals. All humans are created equal. All humans have certain inalienable rights. Freedom, freedom, freedom. It's liberty, I understand what they are, but they all equal freedom to be the individual that each person is. Now, those ideals are only 200 and some years old. If we think back to Egypt, it's thousands of years old. If we think to Europe, it's thousands, not as many as this, but thousands of years old. The United States is 250 years old. It's a baby idea or set of ideals that were set in motion. Now, when you set something in motion, it's got to work its way through 7 stages of development in order to become an integrated experience or reality. If we're still in wounded child, then the United States, which did its part as an archetype in the world to have a certain learning curve, a certain freedom. And no matter what levels of imbalance and wounding still need to be faced, it presented a place that was inclusive more than other places. Said, yes, bring people from other countries, yes, and it became a melting pot of people who said, I want to experience those ideals. I want all humans are created equal. Now hear me. I am not remotely saying we have now moved into an integration of those ideals. The events that just took place show that is not remotely the case, certainly not for all. And so, within that, do we want our ideals of equality that would be brilliant for Aquarian stage of development? Unity consciousness, not of the United States, but the United States is a bunch of people who need to be examples, and a bunch of people in these continents need to be examples. But who am I? What am I choosing? Am I stuck in wounded child, or am I willing to look at the ideals of this place and say, it doesn't matter whether I live in the United States, I can practice and move toward the ideals of equality and flow and giving and receiving and inclusiveness versus fear, shame, and judgment, where I'm right and you have to be wrong. I have to win and therefore you have to lose. This is what we're seeing. So within that, in the acceleration of second Kundalini moving into the adult, The soul energy is now rushing in and trying to awaken, and it will either create accelerated breakdown or accelerated awakening, unlike anything we've known. The energies, just like that alignment on the solstice, on the first degree of Aquarius, are encouraging the awakening into unity consciousness. Now, when something gets introduced, like the event on the 20th, it starts at the base of the spine and has to move through all 7 energy centers, through child, adult, to awaken the soul and become integrated experience. If it gets caught up in wounded childville, I make up the word, if it gets caught up in wounded child, and we go into the fight and the agenda of win, lose, right, wrong, I have to control, I have to be heard. I've never been heard. I don't trust that anybody really cares or that I matter. I don't trust that the leaders, up to you to decide, have grown into a stage where they understand how to lead and care for the people, like a government that is the ones who come together to represent the people, who come together to be like healthy adult parents, who say, I will set you up well, child. I will honor and value your needs. I will do my best in the learning curve to keep improving. I will do my best. And I will hold these ideals in place. Well, let's just look at governments everywhere, but I'm going to talk about the United States. How much has this been coming to a head? Who's going to be right and who's going to be wrong? When was the last time we have heard a discussion about the actual needs that we have? How to come together to serve the good of the whole? I don't remember a healthy conversation in the last years. More and more, as we prepare to move from the age of Pisces into the age of Aquarius, this age of the wounded child is fighting harder than ever. And we have access with the internet on the planet to see all of it played out. And so this has become more heightened than ever. We're seeing two sides who don't really care about the issues as much as they care about another quality of wounded child. Me, me, me. No, me. It's all about me. That's the terrible twos acted out in adult bodies. My toy. No, it's my thing. It's going to be my way. And I'm going to hit you or bite you or act out if I don't like what you're doing. Because we haven't built trust. We don't even know what the 9 nurturing needs are. We haven't integrated them in our lives enough, and yet they hold the clues that we need to heal the whole thing. I'm not finished yet. I know this is a long one, but this couldn't be a more important conversation. We'll talk about this more and more in other Facebook Lives where we'll just take one piece at a time. This is more an overview of cycles. So now we have this for a long time. It's certainly not just the last 4 years. However, as we prepare to move into Aquarius as an energy for the next 2,000 years, by the way, as we move into the learning curve of awakening, we're either going to go through accelerated breakdown and destroy and control and destroy and control in the name of this, which doesn't have solutions. It just has pain, friction, and destruction. We need to move up into the heart, into the adult who says, I'm willing to show up and have this learning curve. I'm willing to show up and learn how to be a leader in my own life, in my own community, in my own family, that holds a space of individuality. So what have we witnessed over the last decades? This coming to a head. And certainly now I'm going to talk about the last 4 years. And believe me, I'm not someone who's going to preach politics. I don't care about the political perspective. I care about the leadership and the governing that sets up the people well, that becomes healthy parents for the people I have chosen to represent, to nurture, to take care of, to help grow through a healthy learning curve. That's what I care about. But I'm going to talk about the archetypes that are present. In my opinion, and you do not have to agree with me, in my opinion, even though each person is a whole person and doesn't represent just one archetype, for me, because I have lived in New York City for decades, I was already familiar with Donald Trump. I'd already witnessed often the tactics, the approaches, the choices that this person has made. I'm not trying to whittle him down to one archetype. However, I sent love to him, that his perfect journey and the part that he has played for all of us, because the soul says all things, all events are informing you. All things are there to serve you. I believe that. Day one of him being elected, I said to myself, the archetype of the wounded child is going to be very present for the next 4 years. You make your own decision whether that's true. We've already talked about symptoms of the wounded child. I have to be right. I don't know how to listen and consider other people. I don't consider anybody cares about me. Therefore, I don't know how to truly value. And so I'm going to be right. I'm going to do what I want. And I will be heard. And no one will tell me that I can't. Me, my way. These are wounded child perspectives. I don't feel safe to tell the truth about a lot of things. I'm not saying that's 100% of any person. I'm saying I think we have been prepared as a planet to enter a level of conversation that I have not witnessed before. I personally think that on a soul level, Donald Trump has served the world as a catalyst, seeing what has been held down for so long that has burst out, but rather than knowing how, which we don't have to judge, but we do have to respond, not knowing how to be the integrated adult, healthy leader that considers all sides and engages in healthy conversation and holds a space for inclusion and individuality. Instead, I've witnessed, you decide for yourself, much greater antagonism, much greater inciting of the wounded children in the world. Yeah, build that wall. Yeah, lock her up, whatever. Believe me, I'm not preaching politics. I believe there are gifts on both sides that we desperately need adults to recognize and come into positions of leadership, and the ones who are there recognize the adult potentials of themselves, continue to work on their wounded stuff, work through the lessons, and show up to have the learning curve that considers the gifts of both sides. So we might really love the financial approach of this side as long as it stays in balance and fairness, not I'm great at this, so it's going to be me, and I don't really want to consider the whole. But if we consider the gifts of this financial approach that is healthy, that honors the freedom of individuals, but is willing to show up and take responsibility in fairness, not me, and then we take the gifts of the other side, which have tended to be more about the inclusion of people and the fairness of people, but haven't had the same gifts of approach. Oh my God, this is the center of both sides. Gifts coming together to learn how. That's the healthy adult. That's what I said in the initial map that we all need to be doing. Coming together, both sides, listening, talking, sharing, It's entirely possible. Now you understand why I gave the examples at the beginning of this share about the families, whether they're having a longer term negotiation and learning, or whether it was 36 hours of meaningful. So I perceive we've had a lot of wounded child who has said, I can't be wrong. I can't make a mistake. I can't take any accountability. It's just going to be what I want. I don't even have to stand for what I've said. I'll change my mind. Whatever it takes to get my agenda. That's not 100%, but there has been that element present in the acceleration of energy that is attempting to move us out to here. So now we have an election. The people speak. Clearly there are people in lots of points of view, and more people than ever, yes, voted. And without getting too immersed in the politics of things, President Biden was elected. There were 60 legal cases that said, show us any element that there has been a broad stroke of voter fraud. Why do I bring it up? Because it equals one side saying, I don't like how it's going. No, I don't like how it's going. No, I'm going to make you wrong. I'm going to spend my whole time taking you down. No, that's what I'm going to do with you. You get the point? So the election of the people showed that same thing is true. We as the people, it's not just the leaders, we as the people. That's not everyone. But it depends on where you are in your learning curve to whether you're going to stick with the wounded child or grow into, okay, let's give it a fair chance. And 60 legal battles that didn't show examples of proof, etc. And so Joe Biden's inauguration, Joe Biden's confirmation on January 6th brought us to a wounded child who said, no way, I will not accept it. I am not preaching politics. I'm going to repeat it over and over. Archetypes of energy, souls that are sacred. Every single soul in this is sacred, having their perfect lessons. And yet, the will of the people, after all those attempts to see if there was evidence to the contrary, and we have, no, I will not. I'm not going to play. I'm not going to come. I'm not going to be in the event. Prior to that, said, I'm going to incite other wounded children who are also upset that the parents don't know how to hold a space for sacred individuality. This is true in the ideals of the United States. If they only get turned into idealism, which I said earlier is another sign for BS, and we say it, but we don't work to integrate it, that's a problem. But if we are ready for this awakening, then we use these events to go, wow, yes, there have to be consequences to the child for acting out. We can't have a system where everybody just acts out, then we fall apart. And we lose the progress we've made. We have to have accountability. So within that, an incitement of the wounded child, and rather than getting caught up in blame and shame, how dare those people act out in that way? I first say the soul says, everything that's happening is here to reveal you to you. So I must, if I'm going to be healthy, say, wow, where have I ever acted out? Where have I ever lashed out? Where have I ever not been responsible? Where have I been stuck as the wounded child? What do I need to continue to learn and grow? Rather than pointing fingers, even though there needs to be accountability, and that is having a process. But if we stick with the archetypes of what it's all there to represent, we respond first on the inside, and I say, I'm ready to take my position in more leadership of adult and value of soul. I'm willing to become a part of the unity consciousness, the inclusiveness, the sacredness of individuals. I don't need to shame the child, condemn the child for having a learning curve, but I do need to send the child to timeout. I do need to say there will be consequences if you continue to act out in this way, if I'm a healthy leader parent. So man, do we have a lot to look forward to as the energies on the planet continue to accelerate. They will not slow down, and we are likely to see tons more acting out of the wounded child. We will not heal it on the planet by sitting back and waiting for those people to fix it or those people to stop acting out and being foolish. Not helpful. We do need accountability, but where am I in it? Where am I in my process of evolution? Where am I in the stage of moving from child to adult to soul? That is what it means to you. Don't lose sight of your own journey. People say, well, I'm powerless to make a difference. You don't have to make a difference on the world stage. You make a difference in the world by aligning like we talked about before, by connecting in meditation to yourself and to others, sending energy of comfort and support, not just to the people who are more enlightened and awakened. No, the child needs examples of loving acceptance. Every one of us has aspects of wounded child still to work on. I have had such a huge learning curve. I share it in all of my videos in various ways. Trust me, we all are in this together. But the reality is, we are in the second Kundalini awakening, and the soul energy is now permeating, and we will either have accelerated breakdown, disease, and death, or we will learn how to align, nurture, have a learning curve, work together. I hope in this share that seeds of possibility have been planted that make sense to you, that give you lots of food for thought. I look forward to so many more conversations. Please tell your friends and family if you got something out of this and want more people to be aware of these perspectives. These allow us to embrace everything that's happening and to nurture our own fear within it, how to evolve within it, how to learn together within it. That is what will change our world, and it will not magically happen without us. The world needs you and me to show up in a big way. If you have questions, if you have comments, please reach out to me through my website, ronbaker.net. Just send me emails, send me comments, send me suggestions of things you want me to talk about in the future. But because this has already gone on for a very substantive, crucial conversation, will end for now. I send you tons of love, sacred acceptance, right where you are on your journey. I send you love, and I look forward to sharing more of the journey. Thank you so much for being here. Be good to you.